Greetings and welcome back to yet another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Blue Baby. And of course, on any hard mode daily, there are a few things to be kinda aware of. And I think, again, this is just one of those things which kinda comes up over and over again, but I just never really can get used to it. I guess maybe the part of it is just because there are so many easy mode dailies, so whenever we do get a hard mode daily, it's such a stark and contrast difference that maybe I'm just not used to it. But of course, when you got the Curse of the Lost on the very first floor with hard mode and of course the burning basement, the floors are huge, they're gigantic, and honestly they feel like bigger than some of the floors I've faced on like the 4th, 5th, maybe even the 6th floor. And for me to be in a position like this one, I feel like in some regard this is okay, because what this means is of course that everybody pretty much suffers from the same fate. Like nobody else can go faster than you. I mean, of course to some extent yes, but it's not like that other people have less floors, you know, so we're all on the same level playing ground. But also being on the easier floors for a longer amount of time, of course if there are more rooms, just kind of gives you more opportunities, especially as Blue Baby. That means there's a higher chance of finding a Tinted Drug, of course getting a Spirit Heart, and of course that then allows you to get a Devil Deal or something like that, and that's usually always a good thing. But just being able to really kind of get those consumables, the bombs, the keys, and things like that, and you know, just money for maybe to go to the shop can actually kind of provide you with some breaking opportunities. How many times have you actually been stuck on the first or maybe even the second floor without enough consumables, for example, to go to the treasure room or to the shop? That's probably one of the most infuriating things that can happen to you. And of course, when the floors are this much bigger, the chance of that actually happening is quite lower, because I don't think that actual consumable drop rates are lower in hard mode, except of course for hearts. But usually with Blue Baby, what you kind of have to be also cautious of, or at least what usually kind of proves to be the problem, is his health. And of course that is because you go to the Devil Deals, and if you take just one item, that's quarter of your total max health pool kind of gone. And usually because at the second floor you don't have more than like 3, maybe 4, maybe 5 Spirit Hearts, that means you're left in a very vulnerable position. On the hard mode daily, and especially with rooms like this one, you're just bound to take some damage, of course, and especially because some enemies deal 1 full heart of damage to you, it's usually quite a dangerous proposition. But luckily in this particular daily, that wasn't too big of an issue, because as it kind of happened, the first Devil Deal actually didn't contain any items, and as a result, of course, we couldn't trade any of our health away, so we're kind of forced to go via this Angel Deal pet, and it proved to be, I think, in this particular case, quite positive. And you might say, how can you say it's positive? At this point, this run actually seems pretty weak, because it's a 12 minute, you're only on the 3rd floor, and the items you have, well, they're good, they're not anything too spectacular. And you're exactly right, it's nothing too spectacular, up until this point. And this is kind of I would say a theme in hard mode dailies. They definitely feel much harder than easy mode dailies, but just in general, a lot of the Blue Baby dailies we've had in the past, I would say month or 2 months, just weren't that good, and I honestly kind of feel like that's not okay, because I like Blue Baby a lot. He's a very difficult character in its own regard, but also feel like he's a very fun character to play as, and for him to be gimped like this, I felt like this is injustice, and justice had to be done. Of course, we live in a world where law is order to some extent, and for this to happen and go unnoticed, I think is unacceptable. So what I decided to do, just for an exclusive kind of break in this one, is just to really take an hour of my time of this daily and just show this daily who's boss. It thinks that it can give me bad items and make me kind of struggle for my money. No, I say no, because at this point, I'm making a stand, I'm protesting, and I'm saying we need more good Blue Baby dailies. And if I can't get them, then I sure as hell will try to force them, because I feel like this is the only way we're actually gonna get them. And of course, I'm kind of alluding to something that happens on the month floor, and you see that I'm kind of slow. It's the 17th minute, I'm on the 4th floor, actually, this is not even the 5th floor, or maybe this is the 5th floor already, I'm not sure. But essentially, we're not there yet, and of course, the chance of actually getting the boss rush are lowering every single second, and getting to Hush, I feel like is also gonna be a pretty difficult proposition, because we've only started this floor, and if there are 2 more floors ahead of us, we can maybe expect to finish the mount floor at like the 24th minute. Of course, it depends on the bosses and the room layouts and things like that. But overall, I still feel like at the 24th minute, when you enter the Womb 1 and Womb 2, there's just no guarantee that you're gonna get to Hush, right? Having 3 minutes for both of the Womb floors is usually, I would say, enough. But when your run is this weak, and when you're really not doing that much damage, the Holy Light Shot is really the only DPS we have. Otherwise, 6.2 damage at 9 tier delay is really not that good. And fighting enemies like this ones, which are not only champion versions that have much more health, but also they're very hard to hit, because you can't see them half of the time because they're off screen. And when you try to hit them, of course, they bounce around, so you really can't aim that predictably. And you often you actually miss up the most damaging shots you have, the holy light shots. It's very important that you land them, but of course when enemies are so slippery, it can be quite difficult. But of course it's good for AoE, so I guess that's a good thing. So like I said, it really does all depend on the room layouts that you get. If you get room layouts that have a lot of nice enemies that are kind of bundled together, then of course our build is pretty good. But if you get a room like this one, then there's no hope basically. At this point we're just kind of resigning ourselves to our fate, and I kind of realized at the 24th minute, which was my expected time to finish the mount floor, and we actually only entered it at that exact time, was kind of an indication that maybe this isn't really going too well. And of course I was expecting a lot of other people to have struggled as well, so I wasn't too bummed out about it, but I did find a seam, so to say. And was it a big seam? In some regard it was a big seam, but also I feel like a lot of it was knowledge and I think mostly patience. So we got the Ivy back here, and of course because I picked up the Steam sale before, you can see where this is going. And I kind of skipped through a lot of it, but essentially what you can see, I kind of started buying things, I got Chaos, and eventually I get Isaac's Heart. And of course what Isaac's Heart does is makes it that you can play the Ivy bag infinitely many times, because whenever you use it you don't take damage, but you still get the money. And you might say, well, that's pretty good, but of course when you combine it with restock, not only does it become pretty good, and when you get Chaos, but it becomes pretty much a way to get every single item that exists in the game. Of course there are some other things that you kind of have to be aware of, like when you buy too many items in a particular spot, what ends up happening is the room gets filled up. So we needed a way to really move the items out of the spot where I was actually buying them, because if there was an item on top of it, I actually couldn't buy it, and as a result, of course, I couldn't restock it, get to my next item, and I was quite unlucky in some regard, because I wasn't able to get to either of the breaking items or to those items which I needed. So of course what I was looking for is Mama Mega, Blank Card plus Sierra plus something like that, Forget Me Now and Diplopia. And of course Diplopia will allow me to duplicate the Mama Mega. I can use the one on the mount floor to get to Boss Rush, and I can save another one to get to Hush. And of course to kind of combine all of those things together, I also needed the moving box. So I needed like 5 or 6 items to really start and get this going, and it took me quite a while. And when you have so many items in the room, one of them is bound to spawn on top of the item where you're actually buying your shop items. So at first I don't know really how to tackle that, because every time I tried to buy, there was an item on top of it, like an active item I've already bought before. And the only way to do it, I found out, is if you use Mr. Me, one of the new items in the latest booster pack, you can actually command him to go and bring him that item to you. And of course when that happens, that item is then in another place and you can kind of continue shopping. So I thought that was a pretty good idea, and just maybe a very unique way to break the game, something that I definitely haven't thought of before. But also just because I just generally don't tend to break as much. I feel like I'm not really well versed in this minute strategies, but like I said in this one, I took an hour. It took me, I think, exactly an hour to really get all of those components. And when that happened, of course, in one room I got a butter trinket. I just dropped a bunch of spacebar items so I can actually save all my items in that regard. And when that ended up happening, what I did, of course, when I got the blank card, when I got the moving box, and when I got what's the other item I was looking for? The Forget Me Now, the blank card, the moving box, and of course Mama Mega. And of course when I got all of those items, I went in and swapped them with the active items I've had in another room. And when that ended up happening, of course I then used those items as a result. I just saved them there. Of course then I picked up the moving box and packed them all up. And of course the reason why I did that is because I wanted to keep both the Mama Mega and the Forget Me Now for a floor that's yet to come. And of course I wanted to use the Mama Mega on the Hush floor, and then I wanted to use the the Forget Me Now when I actually beat the Void. And of course you can only carry one active item unless you have the moving box, and that allows you to kind of pack things up and of course put them back down on the ground again. And I feel like overall it was a decent strategy, and for it to actually work as well as it did, I think at a certain point I just expected this to not really kind of pan out as I thought it would, but it did, of course. And I think at the end it was an exciting proposition, and the fact we actually get through it and we actually managed to break the game just in the way I intended it to is something that doesn't really happen often. But at the same time I feel like it's something that is both exciting to play as, and in the end I think it's also exciting to watch, because seeing Tooth Tears kind of flying around the room, you saw me how fast I killed Harsh, it's so satisfying, and just enemies just basically instantly die. I also skipped the majority of the Void, so you actually see me fighting the Delirium now, and I wasn't intending to fight Delirium in the first place. And what I wanted to do was, I just decided, I'm so strong at this point, I feel like I can do pretty much everything I want to do. So I just go in, try to fight Delirium, and of course what ended up happening is, I ended up getting hit once, but I did manage to beat him in the end. I feel like, all things considered, I fared pretty well. I tried to hide over the rock in the left corner, I think you saw me do that, and I thought I was safe from hits, but of course there was one shot that actually ended up clipping me, and it was, you know, just one hit, doesn't really matter. I think in the end, what matters is that we get to Delirium, we beat Delirium, and I feel like that's really all a person can ask for. In the end, we did finish the daily in a relatively good spot. When I say relatively good, I mean top 5, and I think the most jarring thing out of this all is that like the first 7 spots have something like about 50,000 points, and then everyone else below that has much less, like in the 40,000s. So the fact was, because we took the time to rate this game, this was really the best way of getting a good score in this one. Of course, some things we could have improved is less damage penalty, that was pretty obvious. Some more exploration bonus at the early levels. Of course, if I knew I was gonna break the game, I could take basically all the time in the world I needed in order to really explore all of the rooms, because I did rush, and of course I skipped some, but also some secret rooms that were kind of lying around and I wasn't managed to find them in the first place. And of course, in the end, time penalty as well, because our time penalty was also relatively high, and the only way to really address that would be just to maybe break a little bit faster. But I also think we were a bit unlucky because we didn't get the items we needed at the very start. So all in all, a very exciting daily. It was a bit of a long one. Also, the commentary here, I feel like I was much more joyous than usual, and I feel like that's just because I knew I took my time, I knew I broke the game, and in the end it did turn out to be a pretty enjoyable experience. Not something I intend to really repeat anytime soon because it just takes so much time, but overall I hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and I hope to see you next time.